Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder. Today's guest is Seth Marcum. Seth, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, for sure, Seth. So excited to chop it up with you today, my man. The first question that I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Oh, that's a good question. Off the top of my head, I would say guys like Nasser El Somebody, Tom Prince. You know, I'm sure just as much as everybody else. I'm a fan of Dorian. I'm a fan of those guys. You know, the original mass monsters. But I would say today, I'm a big Heath fan. I know a lot of people don't like him because of his attitude and things like that. But you know, regardless of that, you can't take away from the physique that he has, which is one of the best of all time. But right now, I'd say one of my favorites is Hadi Choopan. The size and the conditioning that he brings is insane. Plus, what he's been through to get to where he's at, you know, prepping for a couple of Olympias and then couldn't make it. So, you know, kudos to him.
That's a great list, a good mixture of past and present. I love it. Seth, let us know, at what age did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
Okay, so I guess I'll start a little bit before I started lifting weights. Both of my parents have always trained, doing different things. So I kind of grew up in the gym. I remember my granny or my grandpa would pick me up from school and they would drop me off at the gym to wait on my dad or my mom to get done training. So I was always in the gym, you know, seeing the guys train and just being in that environment. And I always, you know, pushed my dad to let me lift, and he would let me do push-ups and body weight movements, pull-ups, things like that. But he would never let me train until I was probably, I want to say 14 or 15, getting ready to go into high school. I played football. I played all sports growing up, but once I got into high school, all I played was football. So that's what my focus was, to get a little bit bigger and stronger for that. So after football season, my 8th grade year, I started training with my dad. And that's when I started actually training.
Okay. Now I'm curious, because not too many people, quote unquote, grow up in the gym or have parents that actually go to the gym and train, right? What was the reason for your parents going to the gym? Was it just for health? Was it, you know, doing Ironmans or bodybuilding? What was it specifically for your parents?
Man, honestly, that's a good question. I really don't know. I've never sat down to ask them. You know, it's kind of like, it's almost just like a family thing, sort of. It's like we all just train, and I don't know the reason. I know my dad, his reason is to look better. I'm going to say probably that. And my mom, I think she just likes to stay in shape. I think they just enjoy it. And really, when it comes down to it, that's the best way to go about it, is if you just love to do it. But I don't know their exact reasons why they were always in the gym. But
cool. Well, that's pretty awesome for you, for sure. Now, why don't you let us know a little bit more, Seth, about your childhood, about your upbringing? You mentioned playing all the sports, football in high school. Obviously, parents going to the gym and things like that. But what was your upbringing like? Where did you grow up? Any siblings? Paint that picture up to about high school, and I've got some questions to transition us from there.
Awesome. Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in eastern Kentucky. It's called Prestonsburg. I think there's about 5,000 people, so not many at all. I have a younger brother. He's about 4 years younger than me. But man, my childhood was awesome. I had a really good childhood. You know, I played all the sports. We played outside. We did all the things we wanted to do. You know, we spent the summers at the public pool. You know, everything you want to do. And my brother and I were very lucky because, you know, we still have both sets of grandparents, minus my mother's father. But my dad's parents, they were both retired already when we were younger. So we never had any babysitters. Our babysitters were our grandparents. So we went on trips. We played. We did, you know, arts and crafts. We did all kinds of things. So I was very fortunate to have the childhood that I did have. Once I started to get a little bit older, sports became my main focus. Growing up, I played baseball, basketball, football, soccer, pretty much all the main sports. But football was always the one that I really, really enjoyed. I remember, I can't remember if it was my dad told me it was my first or second birthday. He bought me a football and he said I would never let go of it or something like that. Some kind of, really funny story. But football was the one that I always looked forward to the most. I was never very good at baseball. I was never very good at basketball, but football is the one I excelled at. So let's see. I stopped playing baseball in Little League. And then once I got into like middle school, I just played basketball and football, and then football into high school.
Okay. Now, you're down there in SEC country, right? Kentucky's in the SEC, although they're more known, from my understanding, University of Kentucky's more known for basketball than football. But is it pretty cool, though, being down there, down south in SEC country? I mean, when football season does come around, which we're in right now, is it pretty cool being down in that area? And is football down south kind of in your neck of the woods? Is it life? Because that's kind of what I've heard.
Okay, so yes, especially when UK's winning. So the last couple of years we've been winning ball games, and it's been a lot of fun. So as you move, so like I said, I'm from the eastern part of the state, almost into like Virginia. I'm so far east. And as you move towards the eastern part of the state, football is kind of like a religion, sort of. I'm sure if you've watched the movie Friday Night Lights or the show, it's very similar to that. It's a small town, and it's all that we really have to look forward to. So Friday nights is a big to do in our town, or at least it used to be. So yeah, football is like, it's very important.
For sure. I've had several other guests on. One of the guys played at like Alabama, and some guys that are down south in the SEC, and they're just like, yeah, it's God, it's life down here, which it's kind of cool that, growing up you have some sort of culture like that, whatever your parents or the adults in your life are kind of instilling in you, then you have this football or sport culture that is just, I mean, there's nothing quite like it. I mean, you mentioned Friday Night Lights. I'm from a town in Iowa of right around 5,000 people. So, football is not as big in Iowa, maybe as it is down south, but still, especially I think when you're from a small town, I mean, you drink beer, you kind of just hang out, you chill, but sports is everything, and especially football. So I definitely can relate to that. I think it's something very special. Now, in terms of, it sounds like, your parents were really strong influences in your life, Seth. You had some awesome grandparents as well. Were there any coaches, any teachers, or any other adults when you were younger that you, looking back, feel like really had a positive impact in your life, even up to this point now when obviously you're a grown adult?
So if we start back a long time ago when I was playing, elementary school football, my dad was one of the coaches. And we had a group of I think there was 4 or 5 of them that were all dads of kids on the teams that coached us and brought us up, taught us the fundamentals of the game and things like that. And I can say that each one of those coaches had a positive impact on myself growing up. You learn a lot of lessons playing sports, and they taught us a lot. So not just football, but how to work hard. And then as I move forward, I would say the biggest influence on me when it comes to bodybuilding is my friend, Heath Fan. So once I got into high school, I started training with this guy, which we've been friends for a long time, and he was friends with my dad. He's probably, I don't know, 10 years older than me, maybe a little bit more, give or take. I started training with him, and, I would have football workouts after school, and I would half-ass those just so I could go to the real gym after and train with him. And he's the one that really got me into bodybuilding. So I started training with him my freshman year of high school. And that's when I noticed, like, I was starting to get bigger. My shirts were starting to fit differently. I was getting stronger. People were noticing that I was changing. And I'm not someone that really likes a lot of attention, but I'm not going to sit here and say that it didn't feel good to have people notice that I was getting bigger. And that's when I really started to get into training for hypertrophy rather than athletic performance, I should say. So really, once I got done playing football, I knew, okay, I'm gonna start doing this full time. That's what I want to do. I want to get big. So I would say he probably had the biggest impact on me as far as bodybuilding goes.
Very cool, man. Very cool. Okay, now from your Instagram, I saw that you have a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from the University of Kentucky. So I'm assuming that once this gentleman kind of helped introduce you into hypertrophy training, and you're like, this is like, I love this. This is what I want to do. That probably played into you going to get a degree in kinesiology. So before we get to that, though, once you were kind of like ending up high school or getting close to finishing up high school, Seth, did you kind of have a couple things in mind of what you wanted to be or what you wanted to do with your life in terms of a career? And then once you went off to college and started studying, did you continue to move in that direction? Did you move in a different direction? Talk about that, and then talk about college for us, please.
So college, let's see. So yes, once I started training and getting more into strength related field or the subject or whatever you want to call it, I kind of knew that, and my parents talked to me about it. Maybe we go study to become a strength coach. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I'm in the gym all the time anyways, might as well get compensated for it. So, and I'll tell you this, when I first started school, I didn't realize that that's what I wanted to do yet. I kind of didn't want to go to school, but I'm glad that I did. So it wasn't until my probably, I don't know, maybe sophomore or junior year that that's the direction I started to take. And the University of Kentucky has a really good, they call it the KHP department, which is kinesiology and health promotion or something. And I had a lot of great professors that provided a lot of information for me and a lot of guidance into like, well, if you enjoy this, maybe you should go this route or that route. But college for me as a whole, I know my parents won't like me saying this, but I partied a lot in high school. So once I got into college, I had already started focusing on bodybuilding. So I really didn't party or go out as much as I probably would have had I not found bodybuilding. So really, I didn't do anything too crazy during those years. But as far as becoming a strength coach, though, I would say, yeah, probably my sophomore junior years when I decided that's what I wanted to really do or focus on in school.
Okay. So then once you graduated from University of Kentucky, I mean, did you get into strength and conditioning coaching? Is that still what you do? What's kind of the career situation right now?
So right now, if you look at any kind of application for one of these top strength coaching positions, it's always bachelor's degree required, master's degree recommended. So it says recommended, but it might as well say required. If you don't have a master's degree, they're not going to hire you. That along with your CSTS certification, which is the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. So those are like the three main things that you need. So currently I'm in grad school, still at the University of Kentucky. My master's degree is in sports leadership. So my undergrad prepared me for what I needed to know as far as like physiological stuff. And this degree is kind of teaching me, because, at the end of the day, I'd like to open up my own gym, which would be an open gym facility. But I would also like to have a separate section for athletic training where I can train these athletes. And this degree is kind of preparing me for that field, teaching me more the business side of things.
Very cool. So let's start moving towards bodybuilding talk, because that's kind of what we're all here for, right? So early in high school, start the hypertrophy training. You start taking bodybuilding more serious, you said, in your undergraduate studies. So when did you decide to first compete? And how did that first competition go for you, Seth?
So that's that's actually a funny story. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust my.
Oh, you're good, man. You're good. You're good.
Um, so I graduated high school in 2016, in the spring of 2016, and I started school that fall. I was 19 years old starting college. Um, Once I got done with high school and football, I started training for bodybuilding, and I decided, hey, I'm going to do a show. So it was the beginning of 2017. I started prep for my first show. We were, I think, 17 weeks out from the Kentucky Derby Festival, which is a local show here in Louisville. And that was the hardest prep that I have ever had. out of the 4 shows that I've done, that was by far the hardest one. It taught me a lot about bodybuilding and a lot about what it takes to call yourself a bodybuilder. I got my ass kicked at the show. I got 4th out of 5 guys. So it wasn't totally terrible, but it definitely it opened my eyes as to how far I needed to go to be a good bodybuilder. Even at the local level, I was still very far off. But once I did that first show, man, I was hooked. I was like, this is what I want to do. I really enjoy this. I'm just going to keep doing it. And, it left a bad taste in my mouth, but it made me work a lot harder in the end. So that first show was definitely a memorable one.
Now, for your first competition, Seth, did you have a coach? And if so, how did you go about finding that coach or having them prep you?
Yes, I did have a coach, and he was a local guy. Well, he was a local guy to a buddy that I had. So I had previously trained with this guy, and he had moved to Lexington, which is about 2.5 hours away from where I'm from. And he got in touch with a guy and became friends with a guy that prepped people. He was just starting out as a prep coach. And I was like, hey, let me get his info. I'd like to do this show, and I need some help because I don't know what I'm doing. So that's how I got in touch with him. He prepped me for my first show and part of an off season, but that was about as far as that one went.
Okay. Now, why don't you talk about the other 3 shows that you've done? Because this year, 2022, you won the Mr. Kentucky. So talk about you talked about your first show, talk about the other 3, and then why don't you go into detail about Mr. Kentucky and what does that kind of mean? I mean, obviously you're from Kentucky, you win Mr. Kentucky. That's got to be kind of a feather in your cap, at least locally. So the other 3 shows, talk about them, and then specifically talk about Mr. Kentucky, please.
Yeah, so my second show was in the fall of 2018, and it was the Kentucky Muscle, also here in Louisville. And I got 4th again. I started prep. I was a little too chubby, and I didn't give myself enough time to get in shape. I came in decent shape, but just, I just didn't have the size and the condition to hang with some of these dudes that were at these shows. I want to say that in the past few years, Kentucky has had some pretty good bodybuilders. So the guys that I was going up against weren't, just irregular local guys. They were pretty good bodybuilders. A couple of which are pros now. So anyway, got 4th again at that show. And that was one that really, I was like, man, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm getting beat. It's not fun. It's a lot of work, a lot of money, but I just kept at it. So I took 2 years off from them to grow. And so my third show was in 2020, and it was the Indiana Muscle. And that was a strange prep because that was right in the middle of COVID. It was August of 2020. So it was right in the middle of when it all was starting. I changed show dates like 3 times because shows kept getting canceled. And I said, if this one gets canceled, then I'm just going to call it. I came in and I won that show. So I came from 2 4th places to finally winning my class in the overall. So I was ecstatic over that. I still wasn't as good as I wanted to be, which I don't know any bodybuilder that ever is. But that one gave me, a little bit more confidence. Like, okay, what I'm doing is working. I just got to keep at it. So I gave myself another 2 years. I think it was right at 2 years because the Kentucky State show was also in August of 2022. So right at 2 years, time to grow. And I came into that show and I won so it's like there's like two shows in one. You have the Kentucky State and then the Kentucky Open. The state show is just for Kentucky residents. The Open's for everyone. I entered both of them and won both overalls. So being Mr. Kentucky is really cool because I have a lot of friends that were previous Mr. Kentuckys, a lot of guys that I would consider mentors in bodybuilding. So it's kind of cool to join the ranks with those guys. And it does mean something in the state, like being Mr. Kentucky is kind of a cool thing. A part of a good group of guys a lot of them are pros. A lot of them were excellent bodybuilders. So it was something that I was very proud of. And gave me a lot of motivation going forward.
Now you mentioned that Kentucky's got some pretty decent bodybuilders and things like that. Overall speaking, I guess in terms of the state of Kentucky, I mean, is there a pretty strong bodybuilding community or communities scattered throughout the state? What's it kind of like overall? Because I don't really hear of Kentucky in terms of bodybuilding ever.
So we have a lot of young guys. So I know you spoke with Jagger Holbrook, who just did the North Americans. We have a lot of guys that are on the come up right now. So I think there's probably 3 or 4 of us that I think speaking in a positive manner, I think you'll start hearing more of us coming in the next few years. The fitness community or bodybuilding community as a whole, I would say that the fitness community is pretty substantial in Kentucky, especially in like the central part to western part of the state. So like Lexington and Louisville, they're your 2 major cities in Kentucky. There's a pretty substantial fitness community. As far as bodybuilding goes, it's much smaller, which I'm sure it's very, very similar in most other states. But there's a lot of really good competitors, I think, across all divisions. So, not just, I think as far as bodybuilding, there's probably 3 or 4 of us that I think are pretty damn good. But as far as like other competitors, there's quite a few.
Okay. Now, the gym that I see you training out of there on your Instagram, it looks like it's a pretty legit gym. I mean, you guys must have some decent gyms in the area or out there as well, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. The gym that I train at, Everyday Athletes, best gym in the state of Kentucky. I will say hands down. The guys that own it, they're awesome. And just the atmosphere and the people that go there. You can never walk in the gym and not feel the want to train or get better because everybody's after some kind of a goal. We have guys in there, girls from all genre of strength sports. So we have Olympic lifting, bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman, CrossFit. I'm sure I'm leaving something out, but we have somebody training in some genre of strength sport, and they're all competing at a high level too. There's some very, very good competitors in there.
Cool. Now, in regards to training, Seth, why don't you talk a little bit about your training style, your training philosophy? How did it kind of start? How has it evolved, if it has? And let's just touch on some of the nuts and bolts in terms of your specific training.
Absolutely. So I'll go back to mention when I was training with my friend Heath, and I didn't realize this is what I was doing at the time, but it was always progressive overload style training. We trained a little bit more volume than when I trained with him than I do now. But it was always progressive overloads. It's like, let's put a little bit more weight on the bar. Let's do, a rep more than you did last time. Let's, fix your form. Let's be a little bit better than you were the last time. So he kind of instilled that into me, that kind of mindset. And the gym that I trained at was an old school powerlifting gym, which, I think in the town that I was at, myself included, there's 3 bodybuilders. 2 of which are 60 and 70 years old now. So, but they both, the guy that owned the gym was an old bodybuilder, and the guy that worked in the gym was an old school bodybuilder. So, and everybody else were just these big, nasty power lifters, nasty in a good way. So training intensity was something that I think that I grew up into when I mentioned I was in the gym at a young age. So that was something that was instilled in me from being just a little kid. Is, you know, you train hard, you know, at all times. So, you know, I remember being younger and there's guys in there and not saying this makes you hardcore, but you know, they're throwing things, they're cussing, they're screaming, they're lifting weights, you know, they're getting after it. So that's something that I've always remembered and I feel comfortable with. So I would say, you know, my style is very, very Jordan Peters-esque, which I'm sure you've probably heard that from many people. Just hard, nasty training. And, you know, it doesn't always look like that. Cause I mean, there's some, you know, people get this notion that if you're not screaming, you're not throwing things, you're not doing things, you're not hardcore. But you know, I think the way I train, and a lot of other guys that I know train are pretty hardcore. They train hard, they train heavy, even during prep when, you know, they're tired, the food's low, cardio's high. But I would say very Jordan Peters-esque. I do, and, you know, it just depends because I have different ways as well. Sometimes I'll do a bit more volume than I usually do. Usually it's a top and a back offset, like a lot of guys. But sometimes I'll have, you know, 3-4 sets of something, maybe an isolation exercise. But usually for like heavier compound lifts, 1 or 2 sets to failure. I just, my goal when I step into the gym is to be a little bit better than I was last time. And even when I wake up every day, I think that's the mindset that people should have, is just try to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. And if that's your goal, there's no reason that you won't make progress, or at least that's how I feel about it.
Absolutely. I love that mindset. Now, you mentioned Jordan Peters. Is that somebody else that just kind of within the bodybuilding community that you kind of look up to, or just kind of follow his content, or not so much?
Yeah. So I remember in 2017, I joined his forum for his, you know, paid website or whatever. Watched all of his videos, watched the guys that, you know, posted his logs or that have logs on there. So James Hollingshead, you know, all those dudes. And man, it just like, I remember saying like, man, I want to be one of those guys. I want to be ripping, you know, the weights. I want to be huge and just nasty. And like that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I might not be the best bodybuilder in the world, but if people can look back and say, you know, that dude trained hard, that dude gave it hell, that dude was, you know, he did everything he could. He had a great physique. You know, so be it. That's kind of what I want. I just want to be known as somebody that did everything right and did everything the best that he could. And I think a lot of those guys are what made me want to be that way, because they trained hard, they did what they were supposed to do. They lived life as a bodybuilder.
Now, in terms of kind of like what you're trying to do with your physique in bringing any lagging body parts up, or I mean, most bodybuilders are always trying to get bigger, right? But specifically speaking, Seth, kind of going forward after this win with Mr. Kentucky, what areas of your physique are you really concentrating on in terms of bringing up or putting that muscle, that tissue in those areas?
Yeah. So the biggest focus for me this off season going into next year is my chest. I think I have pretty good shoulders, but I noticed that my shoulders overpower my chest. So it's not even that my chest sucks. It's just, it doesn't look as good as it could because of my shoulders. So I've got to really focus on that this year. Hamstrings from the back. I need a little bit more thickness in my back, my rear shots, and back width. I think I've got some decent thickness. I just need to be a bit wider on some of my shots, especially a rear double bicep. And you know, pretty much just filling in gaps to try to make my structure a little bit better. You know, I have decent structure, but I don't have one of these flex wheeler type structures. So I've got to do what I can to make up for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to go back to the Mr. Kentucky competition. Did you prep yourself, or did you have somebody prep you, coach you? And why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So for the Mr. Kentucky, I worked with a guy named Hani Salib. His wife is Donna Salib, who won the New York Pro in women's bodybuilding this year and is going to the Olympia now. He helped me for probably I can't remember. It might have been like 8 or 9 weeks of that prep, and did the peak process for me. But it was a good experience. He had a lot of different methods of doing things. So the prep was a lot different than anything I've ever done before, but the result is what I wanted. So everything went very well, and I can't complain about it.
What do you think about kind of the coaching scene within bodybuilding? I have a lot of awesome coaches on the podcast. I actually really enjoy having conversation with the coaches because a lot of them have kind of either still competing or they've stepped away from competing, and they kind of understand the competition side. They understand the coaching side, and it's just kind of fun to pick their brain. But as I kind of scroll through Instagram, you just see a lot of razzle and dazzle. You hear a lot of horror stories, I guess you could say, in terms of coaches, especially I think with female clients. But what's your take on the current coaching kind of atmosphere within the bodybuilding community? And somebody that's younger, obviously you're still very young, but somebody that's younger, think about competing maybe for the first time. Would you suggest them to reach out and find a coach or try to do it on their own? What say you on some of that stuff, Seth?
So I think, and I'm sorry about this slide.
Oh, you're fine, man. That's okay. You need to adjust your phone again? Go for it, man.
Let me slide this over here.
The sun's after you today, dude.
And it's just one window every day about this time. Kills me.
At least the sun's shining today. That's always nice, right?
Oh, it's a nice day out. not for podcasts, apparently. Is that any better, you think?
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's all good, man.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry about it. It's all good, man.
I would say for someone starting out in bodybuilding, especially with the amount of coaches and the knowledge that we have now, I think it would probably be beneficial to have a coach. If you look back or like talk to some of these guys that were bodybuilding in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, a lot of them talked about, having to do it themselves and the limited resources. So a lot of things they were doing was trial and error. So it could either work really well or it could work not so well. And I think with all the knowledge and education and everything we have now, it would kind of be silly to not at least have some kind of a person helping you starting out to at least teach you the basics. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's definitely beneficial to have a coach when you're starting out. And then as you learn your body, which is something that I would like to start doing more, is doing more for myself. I would say you could probably prep yourself or at least have some kind of a knowledge for an off season or going into like the beginning phases of a contest prep. But I'd say definitely start out with a coach.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's I think that's pretty smart as well. Now, in terms of the coaching scene as a whole, in terms of the bodybuilding community, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you have any thoughts on just kind of what you see on Instagram and social media in terms of prep coaches?
Well, here lately, there's been a lot of things being brought to light about some of these prep coaches and some of the sketchy practices that they've had. So I think it's worse for women. A lot harder for them to decide on who to work with or what the best fit might be, because some of these dudes are just doing some terrible things. But for men, I think there are a lot of good coaches out there, but for as many good coaches there are, I think there's a lot of bad coaches as well. So what I would say is, speak to these guys, talk to them and ask them questions. If they don't answer your questions, then I wouldn't worry about working with them, because either they can't, or I don't like the type of coach that just says, do this way, or I'm not going to help you. The coach should be able to answer your question and not be offended that you asked, and try to teach you along the way. Because I think that's the relationship that you should have, is almost like a teacher, sort of, to teach you how to do things, or teach you the correct way to do things, and not just try and belittle you for asking, or just tell you this is the only way you should do it. It's the right way. You know what I mean? I think there's with bodybuilding, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. So, what works for somebody might not work for somebody else, and you should be able to explain why that is.
Okay. Now, I want to touch on kind of like your thoughts, Seth, in terms of what you've seen with the pro qualifiers so far this year. So we've had North Americans was just not too long ago, and then we had USA's, at the end of July. I'm sure you're friends with some of the guys that competed in these competitions. So what are your thoughts on the overall winners at USA, at North Americans, and then maybe some of the other class winners, some of the other guys that you saw on stage? From my perspective, I think the NPC level open men's bodybuilding is just it's really leveled up. Here recently, last year's nationals was very, very strong. We've seen some very strong competition in the pro qualifiers this year. I think it's just going to continue to level up. What say you in terms of some of your thoughts on some of these competitors this year at the pro qualifiers?
So starting with the USA's, I thought Stewart looked awesome. I knew going into it he was going to be tough to beat, because you don't see many super heavyweights with a waist like he has in his ab and thigh shots. So super nice guy too. I've had a couple conversations with Stewart, and he's very smart, a very good guy. But I thought that was a clear winner there. He looked awesome. But I think the top three at that show looked awesome in the supers. You had Cole Eastfold and Brandon Burrow, however you say his last name. I thought three very good super heavyweights at the USA's. But I thought Stewart definitely, he took that one. Going into the North Americans, I'm a big fan of Dom Trivellini's physique. I think he trains, same for Stewart. These are two guys that train very hard, and that's something that I really respect. So I was a big fan of both of those guys. But I think Felix Norman won that show, correct?
Right.
Insane looking. Condition was spot on. I mean, he's a bigger dude too. I think he's 6 foot tall.
Yeah, if not 6'1", yeah.
Yeah, I know he posted a picture that he was 308 in his off season, so just a monster of a guy. I think this year the two pro qualifiers that we've had were better than the last couple years, as far as guys. Which like you mentioned, nationals last year, that was a very good one, and I anticipate nationals this year being very good. But it's just the standard of these super heavyweights this year, and the heavyweights have been very good. So I think people always like to harp and say bodybuilding is not as good as it used to be, or these older guys were a lot better than we are now, and all this stuff. But I think we're pretty damn good, and I would like to see, if possible, us stand against those guys back when we were their age. I would like to see that comparison, but that'll never happen. But it would be interesting to see, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm right with you, Seth. I mean, there's so many. I mean, Stewart's I don't know, 24 or something. I mean, Felix, I think, is maybe 28. A lot of these guys that are turning pro, they're 23, 24, 25, late 20s. I mean, and they say that once you get into your 30s, that's really kind of the prime for bodybuilding. So it's I think, and I know that we're in great hands in terms of open men's bodybuilding, and it's exciting, man. Now, in terms of your future plans, Seth, competing, where are you at in terms of going into an off season? How long do you plan to have an off season? And then when can we expect to see you on stage next? And will it be a pro qualifier? I'm assuming it will be.
Yeah, so my next show will be a pro qualifier, since I'm already qualified now. Again, but right now, I'm still trying to milk out as much of this rebound as I can. And I'll take a little break after that and then start my actual off season. But I'm anticipating being on stage for the USA's or the North Americans next year. I'm not sure which one yet. We'll see how it lines out. I'll graduate in May, so that'll be a lot of stress off my back. So yeah, I think USA's or North Americans, whichever one I feel like I'm going to be ready for, that's what we'll do. I want to make sure that my thoughts are different on these shows. I feel like I've never done a pro qualifier before. and I was planning on doing my first one this year after the state show, but I didn't feel 100% ready. And by that means I mean that I think I could go and hang with these guys, but if I'm going to do this and I'm going to pay all this money to do this show, then I want to know in my heart that I have a chance to win the overall. And then after that, jump into a pro show, because I feel like if you're going to be a pro, then you should be ready to jump into a pro show immediately after. That's just, that's how I feel about it. Like the way Stewart did it, he won when the USA's jumped in Tampa a week later and beat a lot of very good bodybuilders. That's a pro in my eyes. So that's kind of what I'm expecting for next year for myself. So we'll see going forward.
Yeah. I think Stewart got 7th place out of like 14, which, he's like, he wasn't happy with that, but I think a lot of people are pretty impressed. You literally just turned pro a week later, you get 7th out of 14. Like you said, he beat some legit IFBB pros. I mean, so that's really cool to see. I love that mindset. I love that philosophy. Now, I know as a bodybuilder and just kind of in life in general, if you want to be successful, you've really got to just take it one day at a time. You can't get too far ahead. You can't look too far behind. But I think it's important to have some sort of vision in life and have some sort of forward thinking so that you kind of at least know where you want to go and where you're going. So with that being said, Seth, do you kind of have like some sort of vision or thoughts in your head in regards to how far you would like to take this bodybuilding thing competitively? And if so, share that with us if you don't mind.
So, that's a really good question, and it's honestly something that I've thought about. And it's funny. My dad said, if you don't turn pro by the time you're 30, he said you should probably just hang it up. And I said, Dad, I'll be pro before I'm 30. I'm 25 right now. I said, I'm going to be all right. But I've thought about that very often. I'm going to take it as far as I can take it. So, whether that means I never turn pro or I turn pro and have a good, successful pro career, I'm going to take it as far as that'll allow me to go. I'm going to get as big as my body will allow me to get, as peeled as my body will allow me to get. And I'm going to push it as much as I can until I feel like I can't anymore. And that's the way I feel about anything in life that you're passionate about. If you care about it and you're gonna endure what it involves, or you're gonna put yourself through this kind of stuff, then don't half-ass it. If you want to do something, then go all in with it. So I told myself, this is what I want to do. Just do it. No, like Sean Cleary, his shirt, no plan B. Just go all in with it. I don't know where the road will take me. But I know with hard work and with what I can do as far as like my physique, I feel pretty confident that I'll have a successful pro career. So that's what I'm working towards right now. I might never be Mr. Olympia, but I'm going to give it hell trying.
Awesome, man. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. Now let's take a step back. So, in the beginning of this, bodybuilding story, you start again, kind of like seriously bodybuilding training, maybe, early in high school. And you mentioned like, your body changing. I think, when we start lifting weights, especially when we're athletes growing up, like we know that lifting weights is going to help us as an athlete. So that right there, I think for a lot of us athletes, that kind of sucks us into at least lifting weights, right? But then once you start, like you said, seeing your body change, and maybe you start, the girls start recognize you, whatever all that stuff is when you're younger, right? I understand that stuff kind of draws us into lifting weights and maybe bodybuilding. But then at some point, like we have to say like, okay, I love this. I'm passionate about this. Like I'm going to continue to pursue this bodybuilding thing, like no matter what, whether I have $1,000 in my bank account or 10,000, like this is me. This is what I love. This is what I'm going to do. Looking back, Seth, what do you feel like really pulled you into the bodybuilding life and continues to keep you moving in that direction with your life?
That's I want to say that's a fantastic question. I have no idea. It just like, so, I was passionate about football. I wanted to play at the next level. I wanted to, if you'd asked me when I was a little kid, I'm going to be in the NFL, I'm going to be the next best linebacker in the world, whatever. But it's like, I gave football everything I had. I went through a lot of injuries with football, and I ended up not playing at the next level like I had anticipated. But what I give to bodybuilding is so much more than what I gave to football. And it's like, I genuinely thought I loved football, but it's nothing in comparison to the way I feel about bodybuilding. It's like, it's one of the first things I think about when I wake up in the morning. I think about it all day long, like it's my next girlfriend, it's like, it gives me a sense of purpose, because I don't do anything else. I go to school, I work, but like bodybuilding is something that fulfills me, and gives me something to look forward to. But like, it's one of the biggest parts of my day. When like I mentioned in 2017, when I did that first prep, I was very unsure of things because I had never done it before. And I was like, man, I feel terrible. This is the worst. I don't, I feel small. I feel weak. I feel bad. I'm hungry. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And then as soon as it was over, I was like, man, I'm ready to do this again. I have no idea why, but it's just something that has just completely taken over my life, and I'm not upset about it.
What's in terms of, do you spend much time on YouTube or not really? Too busy for all that?
So we don't have cable, so I watch, Netflix, YouTube, things like that. I do watch a lot of YouTube. It's either bodybuilding related stuff, or here lately it's been haunted house videos or food videos.
Okay, so my question then is, who are a couple of the go-to YouTube channels that you if I had your phone right now, I opened up your YouTube, what would I see in the search outside of the haunted houses? What bodybuilding content or YouTube channels are your go-to?
I've watched a lot of which I mentioned I watch JP's videos, which that was mostly through his website. I watch a lot of Nick Walker videos, Brett Wilkin, Ian Valier, James Hollingshead. A lot of guys that I think train hard. I like to watch their videos just because it like, it gets me excited about training. I would say probably, which I watch a lot of different ones. I watch Fuad's podcast from time to time. I respect all the guys that are on his show. I would say mostly Nick and Brett, probably the ones I see the most videos from.
I could see that. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They're what we would call modern day, hardcore trainers and hardcore bodybuilders, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, I can relate to them as far as the way they do things. Those are two guys that just do things correctly, and their physique show for that, which is what I like about bodybuilding, because you can't fake that. You can't fake the physique. What you put on stage is the accumulation of all your hard work. So if you've half-assed it, you're going to see a half-assed physique.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, bodybuilding doesn't lie. The training, the weights, they don't lie. Now, I want to ask you this. We're going to kind of start wrapping up here, Seth. We've been going for almost an hour. It's crazy. Once you start talking to another dude about bodybuilding and life, it's just like time definitely flies. But I'm going to ask you this just for the simple fact that you're really young. This is bodybuilding is a passion. It's a love of yours. Once you kind of get into, the enhanced side, there are obviously greater risks. We all know that. And I don't want to get into any negative things because that's not what my podcast is about. But I do want, I want to pull out facts. I want to pull out the truth. I want people that are watching and listening to this, maybe they're your age, maybe they're a little bit older, maybe they're a little bit younger. I want them to be able to take some takeaways from some of you guys that are on the climb, right? So in terms of health, do you ever have thoughts about, man, like I'm going all in with this bodybuilding thing. I know there can be some extreme risks. Do you ever have thoughts about your long-term health, or what steps do you take, Seth, personally, to maybe mitigate some of those long-term risks of going all in with enhanced bodybuilding?
You know, that's I think that's great to touch on, and you know, not even being negative about it. It is a big aspect of our sport, right? So it's something that I feel like if you decide to make the decision that I am going to dip onto the enhanced side of bodybuilding, you should be fully aware of the consequences, the risks, and everything that comes with that, and you should be able to, you know, either accept that or say, you know, hey, I'm not cool with that. Which is something that I wish that I was more informed on when I started, and maybe I wouldn't have started so young. But going forward now, if I could say anything, it was get your blood work several times a year, stay on top of your health supplements, heart tests, echoes, calcium score tests, all that good stuff, urinalysis, anything that you can get to just give you a picture of what's going on internally at the time is something that you should do. And my qualm with bodybuilding is that you'll have guys that'll spend a fortune on the gear and the growth hormone and everything else, but they won't spend $100 to get their blood work done. And it's like, guys, you're missing the mark here, because, you know, if you're dead, you can't bodybuild. And I hate to be as blunt like that, but it's true. So, you know, like I said, I stay on top of my health supplements. I donate blood frequently. I get blood work done frequently. Any other tests that I can get, I try to get them as much as I can. But it is a decision that you have to make with yourself and maybe your family if they're involved heavily. And you just have to decide if it's worth it or not. I'm not somebody. I don't want to say that I push the envelope with the way the things that go, but I don't want to say that I don't either, because I'm trying to be the best bodybuilder that I can be. But I'm also very health conscious, so I stay on top of that. You know, I check my blood pressure all the time, things like that. So you just have to decide that it's something that, you know, you have to be okay with.
So speaking to some of the younger guys out there, again, you're only 25, it's so young, but you know, I'm talking about, you know, 17, 18, 19, 20 age range. Cause you kind of said you wish maybe you didn't start as soon as you did, or maybe go as hard as you did in terms of the PEDs. What's a good foundation, or somebody that's thinking about going the enhanced route? From your personal experience, Seth, where's a good starting point? Like, where can you start, or what should you have accomplished before you start thinking about the enhanced route? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be different for everyone, because, you know, you have some of these guys like, you know, it was always rumored that Kai Green turned pro naturally. I don't know if that's true or not, but you have some of these guys that are just genetically blessed, and it's like they can grow just looking at weights. And if I were that guy, I wouldn't touch it until I felt like I needed it. You know, if I'm beating these dudes that are enhanced, then why would I? You know. But at the same time, you have guys that aren't so genetically blessed that want to be a bodybuilder, and they've got to do things a little bit differently. What I would say is be as informed as you can be about everything that you're putting in your body. Know the risks, know what it is, what it does, why it does that. Don't just do something because your buddy at the gym told you to do it. You should sit down with yourself and have a conversation with yourself and say, is this something that I am going to do for a long time, or is this just some kind of fad that I'm in right now, or some kind of phase of my life? Because bodybuilding and these drugs are not something that you can just dabble in. You're either in it or you're not. So I think you should be, and especially today with all the information that we have out there, there's no reason to not be informed about things and not focus on your health. So that's the biggest thing I would say is know what you're doing and know why you're doing it.
Great words of wisdom. Are there is there some content out there, or YouTube channels, or coaches that are putting out some free content that you would maybe recommend for the drug aspect of bodybuilding that some of the listeners or watchers or viewers, excuse me, can maybe go check out? Is there anything that you've kind of learned some stuff from an individual or YouTube channel?
Yeah. So obviously Jordan Peters, it's not free, but his paid website is, I mean, they talk about everything on there, anything you could ever want to know, and you can ask questions and they always answer them. So that's probably my number one source if you want to know more about, you know, the PED side of things. There's a guy on Instagram named Alex Keekel. I don't know how you say his last name, but it's Kikel, I think. And he puts out free information all the time. He does Q&As, and he does, I think he does consultation calls, which those, you know, you have to pay for that. But he puts out a lot of really good information, a lot of drug related information. And there's a lot of other guys that do too that I'm not as well, you know, I don't know them as well, but those are two that I see quite frequently and that I think have a lot of value. But like I said, with the day and age that we are in, it's hard to not be able to find the answer for something that you're looking for with the internet and stuff.
For sure. Okay. A fun question for you. What are a couple of your biggest gym pet peeves, Seth?
Somebody asked me this the other day too. I would say my biggest is not putting your weights back. That drives me up the wall. Or like when people will put like 6 tens on each side and then just leave them. I'm like, why do you do that? Leaving garbage, just not taking care of the gym in general is something that really pisses me off. But also, I said this the other day, but if you're a younger guy in the gym, and let's say that you don't know anybody, this is your first day in the gym, do not pinpoint the biggest guy at the time and go up and ask him to provide you with steroids. Just don't do it. I can't stand that. I can't stand when people do that to me. And I would have never, when I first started out, done that to somebody else. You've got to be able to work your way in and kind of pay your dues and earn your respect around there before you can start asking things like that. So please do not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I own a gym, and the gym that I own is the gym that I grew up training at, and it's been open since 1990. And the gentleman that taught me how to lift weights is the one that opened it. He was a former Mr. California back in the golden era. He competed against Sergio Oliva Senior, like in the AAU bodybuilding. So I kind of grew up in that old school, hardcore bodybuilding scene, and in a small town. And then the guy that taught me how to do powerlifting, he was a champion powerlifter. Both of these gentlemen have since passed away, but you know, he was a Marine. He fought in Vietnam. So like, I just grew up in that environment where it's like, you know, you had gym etiquette. You respected everybody that was older than you. Like, I literally started lifting weights going into 4th grade. So I was literally like a little kid, right? But it's like, it just blows my mind. Like, I have a sign that I got made here at the gym now, and I do go over it with all new members. And up on top, the title it's gym etiquette / expectations. I don't call them rules because we're not in 1st grade, but literally, like, gym etiquette it's non-existent. Like, young people don't even know what gym etiquette is, let alone they don't even know what like etiquette is in terms of please and thank you, looking another person in the eyes and talking, right? So like, I find myself having to go through the gym etiquette expectations list with all new members, literally, because if I don't, I'll have people leaving weights on, you know, a bar. I'll have weights left out. I'll walk in this gym, you know, it's a small community, so we have to be open to everybody. I can't have guys walking around with their shirts off and flexing in the mirrors. I can't have that because we've got soccer moms and we have to kind of cater to everybody, right? But it's like, if I don't cover this etiquette and these expectations, dude, like, people nowadays, especially younger people, they just do whatever they want. It's like, dude, like, have some respect. So I hear you on that one, man.
Well, it's like, not even just like you mentioned, it's just like common sense and etiquette in general, or lack thereof now. I just know, like, when I was growing up in the gym, if I had done half the things that these guys would have done, somebody would have slapped the shit out of me.
Right.
that I've the same with you, that we've had the mentors to teach us the way to act in the gym or in public in general. But it's like you makes you wonder how some of these dudes make it through life with just leaving shit everywhere, leaving weights on the racks, or just garbage in the floor, or just I don't know, man. It luckily at my gym it doesn't happen too much, but God, when it does, it drives me crazy.
I hear you, man.
I hate to be that guy.
And the thing is, I know you said you want to own a gym someday, and I know you will, and you'll be a great gym owner. But I tell you what, like, a lot of us, our dream is to own a gym, and then when we have our gym, it's like, whoa, like, I mean, because like my gym is a small gym in a small town, but still, it's like you just scratch your head like at people like dude, like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? Right. So I'm just going to forewarn you, man, once you actually own your own gym, it'll make you think twice, but it is a great honor. It's a great privilege to be a business owner, to own a gym. And it's pretty fun and cool, but okay. Last question, Seth. And then I'll give you kind of the floor to kind of wrap things up before I do a quick outro, but I like to ask most of my guests this question. I'm going to ask you, what do you feel like bodybuilding has given you, or what do you feel like bodybuilding has taught you?
Bodybuilding has taught me, I think more than anything, is just self-discipline. Is just how to buckle down and get the work done, even when you really don't feel like doing it. Because if you don't, there's some other guy out there that is going to do it. He's going to beat you on stage, and that's just a fact. Self-discipline is definitely probably the biggest lesson. But honestly, man, bodybuilding has just given me a lot of happiness. Like going in the gym and hitting a PR, winning a show, or whatever, just the daily grind of it. It brings me a sense of comfort and a sense of like, if I get out of my routine, or if let's say that I got in bed late one night because my meals got pushed back, it bothers me. Like, it feels like I'm not being as good as I want to be, which is really not a good way to live. But like being 100% and being on everything makes me so happy, and it makes me feel comfortable. So it's probably the biggest part of my life, as far as like what I do on a daily basis. So, and it makes me excited to see what it will bring me in the future. Hopefully a lot of wins and a lot of progress in my career. But I just, even if it doesn't, man, I just enjoy it, and I'll always train, and I'll always do the bodybuilding lifestyle. So it's just something I really love.
Love it, man. Excellent. Okay, Seth. First of all, man, I just want to say thank you for coming on, sharing your bodybuilding story, sharing a little bit about your life up to this point. 25 years young, man. So much more life, God willing, ahead. But I greatly appreciate you coming on, chopping it up with all of us. Before I do a quick outro, Seth, if you have any final thoughts, any final words, any shout outs, any sponsors, anything that you would like to make us aware about, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll do a quick outro, and that will be a wrap. So the platform's yours, my man.
I mean, I want to say thanks again for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate what you're doing for the bodybuilding community and a lot of these amateur guys on the come up. I think that's great. Also, I like to thank my mom and my dad, because they're some of my biggest supporters, and my girlfriend, Reagan. Without those three people, like, man, it'd be tough to do what I do. It is an individual sport, but I get a lot of support from those guys. So I really appreciate all of them. That's about it.
Okay. Why don't you give us your Instagram, Seth? And if somebody wants to reach out to you or connect with you or ask you a question about maybe something that you shared today, is Instagram the best place to do that?
Absolutely. So my Instagram handle is @_ Seth Marcum. And yeah, I'm always open to questions. If people, genuinely want to learn something, or if I can help in some way, I'm always open to helping.
Very cool, man. Thanks again, Seth. I really appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. All of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If it weren't for all of you, the podcast would not exist. I appreciate all of you. I value all of you. It's just really exciting to be a part of this Behind the Muscle podcast community. as the YouTube continues to grow, as the Instagram channel continues to grow. It's just really exciting for me to continue to bring on these top coaches, these top pros, these top amateur athletes, and just share their stories with all of you. It's really exciting. It's something that I really genuinely look forward to. This is a passion project for me. And I just know that, again, if it weren't for all of you supporting, this podcast wouldn't exist. So thank you so very much for all of your guys' continued support. If you guys have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's really important because I release all these episodes first on YouTube, and then I'll distribute them to iTunes, CastBox, and some of the other major podcast platforms. So if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, Behind the Muscle Podcast, please do so right now. That would be greatly appreciated. Then also another quick favor as we wrap up this great conversation with Seth today, please take this episode, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you go ahead and tag Seth, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know that you specifically listened to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. Also, when you guys share these episodes of BTM on your Instagram stories, it's a great way for more people to find the podcast that haven't found it already. They're going to listen to these stories that are being shared on BTM, and they're going to be positively impacted. And at the end of the day, that's really kind of my heart's desire. My focus with the podcast is that I would bring these coaches and these athletes on. They're going to share their life stories, their bodybuilding stories. People are going to watch, people are going to listen, and people are going to be positively impacted. So please make sure you share this episode and all the BTM episodes on your Instagram stories. And finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.